Hey, football fanatics, back again. One more week, then a week off for beach activities, and then when I come back, it'll be time to start previewing all the power conferences in college football, and eventually the NFC and AFC in the NFL. So just a few. This is going to be a shorter one. Also live on my YouTube channel as well as at pennsports.live. Just a few things I noticed in the news, football related. This is sort of uh, a bit of a downtime leading up to camp. But the NFL Clearinghouse released some of their data. They have a group through Deloitte, I believe it is, that is they monitor the NIL deals and they decide if they're kosher or not kosher and whether they're going to reject them or not. Their numbers say they rejected $90 million in NIL deals this past season. The average NIL deal was $14,792 that they accepted. And so that just, I got to thinking, first of all, to beat that dead horse one more time, even though he's dead, it's hard to believe they screwed up this NIL. NIL was meant for the star players to be able to take advantage so that they couldn't have their names and images and likenesses being used on video games and selling jerseys in the bookstore and all that kind of stuff. And of course, it's turned into pay for play, where everyone that suits up is getting a little spending money on the side of their scholarship. But with the average, think about how many other deals are getting done, because I multiplied 14,792 by 80, just give or take on a college roster. Maybe it's 75, 85. I forget what the number is, to be honest, what they're allowed to have. That only gets you to a little over $1 million. Well, we know that there are schools spending $40 million this year on their roster. My Trojans may be one of them. Ohio State's been doing it. Oregon's been doing it. And 20,000 is just, I think darn near all the top 25 teams, from the power conferences are spending at least 20 million on their roster. So either the NCAA clearinghouse, the NIL clearinghouse, whatever it's called, either they're not checking all of them, and they claim they are, all the NIL deals, or there is a heck of a lot of side deals, which is exactly what, it's what they went to Congress for. There's too many boosters and, side deals that aren't verifiable NIL deals. And it said in the article that the NIL deals they rejected was because there was no proven business point to it. It was just, handing someone money. So there's got to, good God, think about how many of these other, side deals that are getting done at all these schools. And you wonder why. Look, I don't think Congress is good at solving much of anything, but I get why they went and asked for help, because they need some help to control this situation. But again, if the greedy adults wouldn't have let this horse out of the barn, we'd be where it was meant to be, where, hey, we can't use your image without paying you money. We can't sell your jersey without giving you a cut of the money. And that's what, the Chevy dealer down the block says, boy, I'd really like Rocco Beck to advertise for my dealership, and I'm willing to slide him a car and some cash. Then that was good for Rocco Beck. He was able to market himself and make that money. But they let that horse out of the barn, and here we are. asking Congress and asking anyone that might have an idea how to fix this to step in. So it's unfortunate, but I thought it was interesting. The average NIL deal 14,792. Think about that. That's so even like the special teamer that doesn't do anything but run down on kickoffs, or the second, or better yet, the third string center that's got no shot at playing unless there's massive amounts of injuries. They're getting at least a little something, for the average to be 14,792. They're getting something on the side. So totally ridiculous. Most of those kids, the scholarship is what they need because they need to get their education to put themselves in a better position after college. So screwed up NIL. I also noticed an NFL article on dementia and how many more players are developing dementia later in life. And it's a sad story and certainly one that should be taken seriously. But the more articles that come out about that stuff, the more, and rightfully so, the more I would think the Players Association will continue to push for more and more safety measures, whether that be, well, I mean, some of these guys now are wearing those puffy helmets that have the extra protection in them. I would think that they would continue, again, with all the smart people we have in the world, to develop a helmet that maybe doesn't rattle you around as much when you get hit. I think they've done a good job. Think about the old helmets. When I started watching football in the 70s when I was a kid, think about those helmets. They were like those ones we got at the toy store. So they certainly have improved them. But you're going to continue to see measures. You have to. How can you watch your former players get diagnosed with CTE, dementia, and not try to do something? It is unfortunate because those of us that watch the everyone likes the big hit, the bone crunchers, but you're going to see less of it because they're going to try to do more to protect the players when you see articles like that. And then last but not least, Terrion Arnold has cleared waivers. I will be curious. There's usually always somebody, if he's worth it. And now maybe they've watched film on him and maybe they say, you know what? I don't know that the baggage will be worth it. But if someone feels that it's worth it, I would assume someone will take a flyer on this guy. Who knows what's going to happen with his case? Obviously, if he's found guilty, he can forget his football career and get used to a jail cell. But he's, he has some of the best attorneys that his money can buy. So that's not a done deal. So I think someone probably takes a chance on him. But it is a big chance. And I don't know what kind of money he should expect or what a team would be willing, league minimum. I know if I were going to offer a potential convicted felon, it would be league minimum. So we'll see how that plays out. All right. Get hydrated for my two fun segments this week. One off of ESPN and one just out of my own tiny little pea brain. First ESPN one, I saw an interesting thing on their website. Best college player by uniform number. I thought that's pretty neat. So we'll skip over zero. Xavier Watts, if he's the best in history, not a lot of people wear zero. So we'll go to number one. Larry Fitzgerald, wide receiver, Pitt, wore number one. Kyler Murray, Jamar Chase, and Anthony Carter. Remember Anthony Carter back in the day at Ohio State, Jamar Chase, of course, at LSU, Kyler Murray at Oklahoma. You could make an argument for all those. Certainly, I don't argue with Larry Fitzgerald. He was a great wide receiver. Touchdown catches in 18 straight games is an NCAA record. Most of these guys barely play 18 straight games anymore. So that was number one. Number two, Deion Sanders. No argument. Cam Newton was a great college player. Charles Woodson, Heisman winner. Derrick Henry, running back at Alabama, wore number two. But Deion, I mean, I don't know that you can argue with Deion at Florida State at number two. I thought number three was interesting. Carson Palmer. I don't know that I expected to see him. Joe Montana wore number three. Now remember, this is college. If you factor in the NFL, then that's a little bit different. But Keyshawn Johnson, who was prior to Carson Palmer, he was in the 90s for USC. And Todd Gurley was the other one they listed as an alternate. But Palmer over Montana is an interesting call. But Carson Palmer did have a great collegiate career playing on USC teams that until his senior year were not very good. He suffered through the Paul Hackett, the end of Paul Hackett's era, and thankfully caught the beginning of the Pete Carroll era. So, and that, he was the quarterback for the Orange Bowl against Iowa that announced that Pete Carroll and USC were about to be players again on the main stage. So, interesting call there, though, over Montana. Deshaun Watson at number four. Great collegiate career at Clemson before he started getting massages. Champ Bailey, Dalvin Cook, Jeremiah Love. I was a big Jeremiah Love fan. I'm anxious to see how he does in the NFL. He killed USC at Notre Dame. I thought he was great. They didn't use him a lot because they played a lot of garbage games. But so no argument there. Number five is where I have my argument. And you know what I'm going to say. They didn't pick Reggie Bush. And I don't care if you were a USC fan, USC hater. I don't care if you think his stepdaddy accepted money or didn't accept money, or they got a house, whatever the deal was. Reggie Bush was the most electrifying college player in my lifetime. And that's without question. I would think about that question for 2 seconds. Reggie Bush was the most electrifying. You could argue that he should have won back-to-back Heisman trophies. Matt Leinart won it. And then Reggie Bush won it the next year. They have Darren McFadden. Look, great running back. A little SEC bias, might I say. In no way, shape, or form was Darren McFadden's collegiate career better than Reggie Bush's. So this is the first time I say this was asinine. They didn't even have Reggie Bush as the next one up. They had LaDainian Tomlinson, who I would have also taken over Darren McFadden for the record. But again, he didn't play in the SEC. And then Christian McCaffrey was number five, not too shabby at Stanford. Number six, Baker Mayfield. Jerome Bettis was number six at Notre Dame, but Baker Mayfield, great at Oklahoma. Number seven, Michael Vick, beat out John Elway, pretty good company there. Number eight, we're going way back in the Wayback Machine. Davey O'Brien, chosen over Julio Jones and Marcus Mariota and Lamar Jackson, who had one dynamic year at Louisville, but probably not enough. But Davey O'Brien gets the nod there. Number nine, Joe Burrow. Steve McNair was on the list. Bryce Young, but no argument there. Joe Burrow, that year he had at LSU was magical. With Eddie O at the helm. So no argument there. Number 10, this one might make me choke a little bit or cry. I'm not sure which. Vince Young, of course, ended his career by running into the corner of the end zone to beat USC in the Rose Bowl and end their winning streak and prevent them from going back to back championships. Not even close to an argument with Vince Young. Number 11, I can make an argument now. I can have fun with my Penn State friends. LeVar Arrington got the nod, and look, he was great at Penn State. Became kind of a wacky dude. Now he's a big podcaster and speaks his mind. Matt Leinart, of course, was number 11. He's the next one on their list. Steve Spurrier, by the way, number 11 when he was at Florida. But I would have taken Matt Leinart, but that would have been biased. Listen, I remember when Matt Leinart came in and took over for Carson Palmer. It was like, oh boy, USC might take a dip here. And he went down. His first game was at Auburn in vaunted SEC country. And boom, 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 touchdowns, win the game. And his career went off like a rocket. Won the Heisman Trophy, comes back for a senior year because he just dug being in college. Let's face it. College Matt Leinart was a whole lot of fun. And so I probably would have selected him, but, LeVar Arrington won the Buckus, won the Bednarik, won the Lambert Trophy, two-time All-American, Big Ten Co-Defensive Player of the Year, and is in the College Hall of Fame. So I can't really honestly argue. The Reggie Bush one, I will argue to the ends of the earth. This one, I can let go. I would have picked Leinart, but certainly Arrington is a good choice. Number 12, Travis Hunter, Colt McCoy, Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck, I'd have to look at his college numbers. Maybe I'm not remembering his college numbers. Hunter was really good, playing both ways, really good. 13, Caleb Williams, Oklahoma/USC. I think I'm okay with a USC guy getting a nod again, but over Dan Marino, I don't know, man. Dan Marino was great at Pitt. So I'm not sure. Now, Caleb Williams was he was a unicorn type of player, the stuff that he could do. So it's certainly not like it's a huge argument, but man, Dan Marino, I think would have been a good choice. 14, Ty Detmer, could have been Vinny Testaverde. That must have been a close vote. 15, Tim Tebow. I think that's a no-brainer. I didn't like him, but I think it's a no-brainer. 16, Trevor Lawrence. For you old schoolers out west, Gary Beeman at UCLA, Peyton Manning at Tennessee wore number 16. Lawrence was really good, but I think you could make an argument for those other two guys. 17, Charlie Ward. Yeah, no doubt. 18, Archie Manning gets on the list. Marvin Harrison, wide receiver at Ohio State, could have been a choice. 19, Eric Dickerson. I couldn't remember that he wore 19 at SMU. That was, looking at the other names, that was an easy one. Earl Campbell, number 20, I think. Well, it wasn't easy because Johnny Rodgers and Billy Sims wore number 20. Ed Reed at Miami as a defensive player. Those are some pretty good collegiate players there. I have no problem with Earl Campbell out of Texas. But man, that's a stacked number 20, when you got Rodgers and Sims and Reed. 21 is Barry Sanders. Could have gone Desmond Howard. I would not vote for Desmond Howard just because he sucks on TV. So I'm good with Barry Sanders. 22, Doug Flutie. Emmitt Smith, Penn State fans. How about John Cappelletti? I think you could certainly make an argument there, and certainly Emmitt Smith. I think Doug Flutie, though, is the quintessential college player. Didn't pan out in the pros, but he was, because he was too small. But man, he's a living legend at Boston College. And that the Hail Mary pass is one of the most famous college football plays of all time, to Gerard Phelan in the end zone against Miami. So no argument there. Jonathan Taylor, running back, Wisconsin, number 23. Again, not a lot to choose from there. 24, Niall Kinnick from the 30s. Kinnick Stadium named after him in Iowa. Could have gone to Pete Dawkins out of Army, another old schooler. 25, Tommy McDonald. 26, Saquon Barkley. Purdue had a guy named Rod Woodson who I loved in the pros, but certainly I would think, Saquon Barkley gets the nod there. Eddie George at number 27, not a lot of competition there. 28, Marshall Faulk, San Diego State, beat out Adrian Peterson, who was really good at Oklahoma. Ricky Dixon out of Oklahoma at number 29. Not a lot of when Jarvis Jones is the third one, that's not a highly used number. Mike Rozier at number 30, that's a no-brainer. Vic Janowitz at 31. Penn Staters, Paul Posluszny was the second vote getter with that number. Johnny Lujack, Notre Dame, back in the 40s for number 32. Probably, I wonder if it had anything to do with character, because O.J. Simpson was number 2 on that list. Franco Harris from Penn State at number 3. That's a pretty good group of guys. Tony Dorsett, was it Dorsett or Dorsett back in college? I think it was Dorsett, wasn't it? At number 33. Marcus Allen. I might have gone biased there and chose Marcus Allen over Dorsett. Dorsett was really good at Pitt. Herschel Walker beat Bo Jackson out for number 34, and Walter Payton. So that's a pretty good group. Doc Blanchard at 35. A lot of old schoolers at number 35. 36, Chris Spielman beat out Jerome Bettis. That's not fair. Jerome Bettis switched halfway through college from number 6 to 36, and he got on both of those lists. 37, Doak Walker. Yeah, no brainer. George Rogers from South Carolina at number 38. Sam Cunningham at number 39 for USC. Sam Bam Cunningham. 40, Howard Hopalong Cassidy from Ohio State from the 50s. Luke Kuechly was the second vote getter. Glenn Davis from Army at number 41. Keith Byers had a good career, but certainly not Glenn Davis-like. Ronnie Lott, another USC guy at 42. Pat Tillman wore 42 at Arizona State. Ricky Bell came before Ronnie Lott, was on that list at 42. 43 is another USC guy, Troy Polamalu. Wasn't a lot to choose from there. That was a no-brainer. Jim Brown, no-brainer at 44. Archie Griffin at 45. Sammy Baugh, old school at TCU, wore 45. Johnny Majors, really old school, wore 45 at Tennessee, but that's a no-brainer, Archie. Khalil Mack at 46. Michael Irvin at 47. Mel Blount, one of my Steeler guys, at Southern University. Gale Sayers at number 48. Julius Peppers at 49. Great college career, Peppers. Great NFL career, too. But Dick Butkus at number 50. Dave Remington could have got a little love from Nebraska, the center. Pat Fitzgerald at 51. Ray Lewis at 52. I'm looking at these lists. I'm going to keep moving because there's not a lot. These were kind of obvious choices. Randy Gradishar at 53. Again, not a lot. 54, Bruce Smith, not the Bruce Smith from Virginia Tech and Buffalo Bills history, running back from the late 30s, early 40s at Minnesota. And Leroy Jordan was the second vote getter from Alabama back in my childhood. Derek Thomas at 55. Had to be a nail biter in the vote over Junior Seau from USC. That both of those would have been great choices. 56, Corey Moore out of Virginia Tech. 57, Stephen Kiner, linebacker, Tennessee. Again, a lot of these, there's not a lot to choose from. 58, Peter Boulware. 59, Alex Agassi from the 40s, Illinois and Purdue. I didn't know they've transferred back then, Illinois and Purdue. 60, Tommy Nobis from the 60s. Chuck Bednarik from Penn University was number 2 in the vote getting. Greg Eslinger, 61. Charlie Trippi, 1940s guy from Georgia at 62. Mike Singletary wore number 63 as a linebacker. That's kind of weird when he was at Baylor. That was a no-brainer. Bob Brown at 64. Jim Lachey was the second vote getter there. He was a good player at Ohio State. Willie Lanier from Morgan State at 65. How about the Fridge, number 66 when he was at Clemson? Refrigerator Perry beat out Alan Faneca, a Hall of Famer, NFL Hall of Famer, who was at LSU. Russell Maryland, great college career at Miami for number 67. 68, Teddy Bruschi at Arizona. Again, a weird number for a linebacker, 68. Beat out Mike Reed. Old guys that are Penn State fans remember Mike Reed. 69, Tom Brown from Minnesota from the late 50s. Beat out a guy who had an unfortunate, when he got drafted by the Steelers, had an accident that paralyzed him. Gabe Rivera, great college career at Texas Tech, was second there. Lloyd Phillips at 70. Merlin Olsen from Utah State at 71. Beat out my guy, Tony Baselli. And Brad Buddy. Boy, I wonder if they canceled out USC votes. USC had some phenomenal offensive linemen back in those days. Bronco Nagurski with number 72. John Hanna, early 70s, went on to play for the Patriots. I remember him in the pros more than I was too young in the early 70s there. Beat out Mark May from Pittsburgh. John Hicks for number 74 from Ohio State, early 70s again. Another Buckeye at number 75, Orlando Pace, beat out Jimbo Covert and Mean Joe Green, who played at North Texas. That's a pretty good Pace, Covert, and Green. And then Will Shields was the next guy. That's some serious trench work on both sides of the trenches there. Warren Sapp at number 76. Red Grange wore number 77, even though he was a halfback. Beat out Alex Karras and Anthony Munoz. I probably would have voted for Anthony Munoz for obvious reasons. He was great at USC. But Red Grange, that's an all-timer. I have no problem with that. Bryant McKinney, number 78 out of Miami, early 2000s. Rich Glover from Nebraska at 79. Now we get into the 80s numbers. Ed Too Tall Jones at number 80. Someone's ringing my front doorbell for some reason. I don't know who that is. I'm looking at the camera. Okay. I'm going to pause. I got to see what this is. Okay. Nonsense in the middle of my podcast, which I don't want to start over. Sorry about that. That is, especially when I'm live streaming it. Ay, caramba. Anyway, Ed Too Tall Jones is where I left number 80. That was an obvious one. Howard Twilley at 81. Tim Brown out of Notre Dame would have been a good choice at 81. There is a Notre Damer at 82, Leon Hart. Kind of a no-brainer. Another USC guy at 83, Richard Wood. Right when I started, sort of right, he was a senior on that team that I first started watching. And I was only like 8 years old. So what did I know? I didn't know anything, but he was on that team. Steve Largent from Tulsa and Kellen Winslow from Missouri would have been solid choices there too. 84, Jerry Robinson, mid 80s, UCLA. USC had a guy on that list, Sean Cody. Good career under Pete Carroll. 85, Jim Seymour from the 60s at Notre Dame. Courtney Brown, another Penn Stater. There you go. At number 86. Beat out Dave Casper, Notre Dame tight end that went on to play for the Raiders. Chad Hennings played at Air Force. And I remember him playing at Air Force in the 80s. Gets solid choice when I look at the other names there. Randy Moss at 88. How about this? How about this set of receivers? Randy Moss got the nod over Jerry Rice, Mississippi Valley State, tight end Keith Jackson at Oklahoma. How would you like to line those two up on the outside and Keith Jackson at tight end? Would have been pretty good receiving core. Ross Browner, no-brainer at 89. Really good player at Notre Dame. Although Mike Ditka made that list. Pretty good at Pitt in his day. Steve Entman from Washington, early 90s. He was a beast on the defensive line. That, when I look at the names, that's a no-brainer. 91, Doug Atkins. 92, Reggie White from Tennessee. Tony Casilla from Oklahoma would have been a nice choice as well, but Reggie White, that's automatic. And I can't ever say his name. And Ndamukong Suh, there we go, from Nebraska at number 93, beat out one of the Selman brothers, Leroy Selman, would have been a solid choice. Randy White, I know him from playing for the Cowboys, but he played at Maryland in the early 70s. And he gets the nod at number 94. Bubba Smith, mid-60s, Michigan State, went on, I remember him with the Colts in the NFL, but that looks like a no-brainer. 96, Haloti Ngata from Oregon, early 2000s, then went on and tortured the Steelers a little bit with the Ravens. Cortez Kennedy would have been a good choice out of Miami at number 96. 97, Aaron Donald from Pitt. That's a no-brainer. 98, Tom Harmon, quarterback, halfback, wearing 98 back in the late 30s. Beat out Lawrence Taylor, who wore 98 when he was at North Carolina. Probably wouldn't have gone wrong with that either. And then last but not least, 99, this was an obvious one, and that is Hugh Green out of Pittsburgh. So I thought that was a neat thing. I would have liked to have not had some lunatic at my doorbell that I felt the need to answer because he wasn't going to go away. But that's a neat, just looking at the numbers. And honestly, Reggie Bush was my only egregious disagreement. And there were some other ones I thought, well, you could have flip-flopped these guys. And I might have picked another USC guy, Munoz or Leinart or whatever. But most of those were pretty good choices for the most part. Kind of a fun exercise. And last but not least this week, I did Big Ten traditions last week. So how about who has the best helmets? And this became sort of, I thought, relatively easy because once I started thinking about it and then I went in and looked at them, so many of the Big Ten teams used like just a letter, I or M or P or whatever on their helmets. There's not a whole lot of flash in the Big Ten. Of course, that was old school. The Big Ten wasn't flashy back in the day. So the helmets went along with that. So I got Illinois coming in last at number 18. I'm not a big fan of their color scheme either, but I could have flip-flopped a lot of these. This was I could throw a net around some of these. Northwestern with just the N on the what I guess purple helmets or sometimes black helmets depending. Rutgers, just the big R. Now I do kind of like I'm a fan of red. It's one of my favorite colors It is my favorite color. So the big red R on the white helmet is kind of cool. Better than the white R on the red helmet, for whatever it's worth. Purdue at number 15, just a big P. They should put the Boilermaker on there, and then I'd maybe up that. Washington at least has really shiny helmets, but the purple W, it is what it is in Washington. They come in at number 14. IU, the IU interlocking at Indiana is 13. Minnesota, I kind of like the color scheme, so I bumped them up. It's just an M, but I kind of like their color scheme better than some of the ones below them. So that's why they got bumped up to number 12. Wisconsin at number 11. At least there's a little flair to the W, the way they print the W on there. And if you look closely, there's I don't know if it's pictures in there, or some kind of wave of different shades of red on that. So I put them at 11. So we get to our top 10. Number 10 is Nebraska. Yes, it's simple. It's just that little red N, but Nebraska gets a bump up because it is iconic. My childhood, and maybe that's not fair when you're judging helmets, but I remember it from my childhood, and the N, the Oklahoma-Nebraska rivalry, and it was just, you were used to seeing that. So they got maybe a bump up where they normally wouldn't have. Number 9 is Oregon. I wanted to put Oregon dead last because they changed their helmets so stinking much, and I can't stand it. And I can't stand most of them. But I bumped them up here. If they would go old school, which is the O with the duck. I like the duck. I hate Oregon, but I like the duck. So I would think about bumping them up towards the top of this list. But all that other crap that they wear, the stuff that it doesn't even make sense. I don't even know what it has to do with ducks. It just stupid. Phil Knight had a lot of money to waste, so he said, let's change the helmet every week. So they're at 9, grudgingly. Maryland is at 8. I like the Terps. Now, if you're asking me to judge that horrible helmet that they occasionally wear, that's like the state flag, which has got to be the worst state flag of all the state flags. It's hideous. Then I'm bouncing them down towards the bottom. But with just the Terps, and I'd love to see him put like a little turtle or a turtle head, like Franklin the Turtle on the side of the helmet. I bump them up a little bit because I'm a child and I like that kind of stuff. But I like the Terps. I like the Terps printed across the helmet. So they come in at number 8. I have Penn State at number 7. There's nothing on their helmet. And I like that. Again, it's iconic. It's something that I grew up, you saw that and you knew it. Now, if you go back to the 60s, they put the number, and about once a season, they do a throwback helmet where they put the numbers on, I think. I kind of like just the plain whites. It's sort of fitting. The uniforms were always plain. Joe Paterno was plain. Much like USC, they wore the black shoes. Just everything about them was very ordinary. And so I believe it or not, people probably figured I'd put them down towards the bottom, but I like the plain whites. Very clean look. Michigan State comes in next at number 6. I like the Spartan. I do. Their team hasn't been any good for a while, but I like the Spartan on the helmet. I'm not a fan of their green. Green's I'm not a big green guy, but they come in at number 6. At number 5, Ohio State, and it's only their helmet would be unbelievably ordinary if they didn't put the Buckeye stickers on around the helmet when they do something good. I don't like when other schools do it, but when Michigan and Ohio State do it, I like it because, again, I grew up with them. They put the stickers on their helmets for good plays. And then other schools started, some other schools started doing some of that stuff. And I was like, nah, you're just copying. So Ohio State, and then they do have a shine to them, that silver. So they're at 5. I have UCLA at number 4. The script UCLA across the gold helmets, and it's the baby blue. I like it. I hate UCLA, rivals of my team, but I like that helmet. I like that script UCLA across there. At number 3 is Iowa. Thank God they could have just done the eye, but they did the Hawkeye. That's why Iowa gets way up there as opposed to Indiana and Illinois and Northwestern. They didn't just do an eye; they did the Hawkeye, and it looks fierce. Like the Hawkeye's mad on their helmet, so I like that. Number 2. Oh, I wonder who he has number 1. Aren't you dying to know who's number 1 on this guy's list? Michigan is number 2. It's an iconic helmet. The yellow stripes going back, I guess, is that to signify a Wolverine doesn't have stripes, but I don't know. But I've always liked it. And again, they do the performance stickers as Ohio State does, which is ironic that they're arch rivals. But I've always liked the Michigan helmets. It's it's again an iconic look. And then at number 1, look, I'm sorry, but the Trojan helmet. Let me see if I can grab this. I can grab it. Now, this is a shiny one that they stopped wearing. They wore it a couple times, but let me see if I can get that in there. I mean, the Trojan on the helmet. Come on, man. You got to listen. You got to give it up for that. I love the Trojan helmet. That's why I started rooting for them, because I saw the band uniforms when I was 8 years old. I was like, that's cool. And then you look on the helmet. Oh, yeah, they got it on the helmet too. So bias, yes, but listen, that's a pretty iconic football helmet with the Trojan and the yellow. I love the yellow and cardinal colors, cardinal and gold technically. But anyway, so that'll do it. I do apologize. There's nothing like I feel like one of those kids that does the video game live streams and they have to run to get their chicken nuggets out of the microwave and they just leave the thing playing. I apologize. I saw who it was at my door and he wasn't going to go away. So it was going to distract me for the rest of the podcast. So I just went and took care of it. And it was for something stupid. But anyway, he's a good next door neighbor. So it could be worse. I will be off next week for Wall to Wall. And then get ready, man. It's hard to believe, but the next week, which this is July 10th. So the 17th I'll be off. So July 24th-ish. Whenever I tape that week, it's time to start looking at Big 12. We'll start with Big 12. Then we'll go ACC, SEC, and Big 10. We'll work Notre Dame in, maybe with the ACC since they sort of play in the ACC. Idiots. I'm sorry, did I say that out loud? And then we'll do NFC, AFC from the NFL. And eventually I'll give you who I think is going to win it all in college football and who I think is going to win it all in Super Bowl in the NFL. So till then, I'm going to enjoy the beach for a few days. Enjoy it, man. The heat's coming back here in Central PA, so enjoy the air conditioning. Maybe that's what I should say. And as always, be nice to one another.